Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is now 18:30 South African time. Thank you so much for joining us this evening for our fourth lecture on the CSA Level 3 course. My name is Abdullah Steenkamp, and my co-presenter for this evening is Tom Okarosi. Tonight, we will cover only two laws, laws 24 and 28. I will kick off by firstly going over last week's revision questions. Then I'll cover Law 24. I will then hand over to Tom, who will cover Law 28. And he will also cover this week's revision questions. And afterwards, we will open the floor for Q&A. So to kick off last week's revision questions, the first one was the bowler bowling a ball to the batter. The ball hitting the batter's pads, but the batsman is soldering arms. And the ball hits the batter in the line of off stump. There's a huge appeal. The umpire turns down the appeal, but the ball then ricocheted from the pad onto the fielding helmet that was placed behind the keeper. For 4 points, discuss and explain the procedure. So firstly, we need to cover what the law say if the ball strikes the pad and when runs shall be allowed and not allowed. So in this case, the ball delivered by the bowler, a run shall only be scored if the umpire is satisfied that the striker attempted to play the ball with the bat or try to avoid being hit by the ball. If the umpire considers that neither of these conditions has been met, which is the case here because the batter soldered arms, what will then happen? If the ball does not become dead for any other reason, the umpire needs to call and signal dead ball as soon as the ball reaches the boundary or at the completion of the first run. So in this scenario, batter soldered arms. The ball then from the pad went and hit the helmet behind the keeper. So because the batter soldered arms, we now know that runs cannot be allowed. So what shall we do in this case? Disallow all runs to the batting side, return any not out batter to his or her original end. If there was a no ball, that no ball needs to be signaled to the scorers. The award of any 5 penalty runs, except if for penalty runs, if the ball should hit the protective helmet that was placed behind the keeper, which is in this case. So what does this mean? In this case, because the batter didn't offer a shot and the ball hit the protective helmet, those 5 penalty runs shall not be scored. So the fifth bullet point says in this scenario, because the striker didn't play a shot, we now know that leg bias cannot be scored. And now we know that the 5 penalty runs for the ball hitting the helmet behind the keeper shall also not be scored. So as soon as the ball hit the helmet, the ball shall become dead, but those 5 penalty runs that will usually be incurred, because the batter didn't offer a shot, shall not be scored in this instance. And the last bullet point, no awarding of penalty runs to the batting side. Second question. So as the bowler's in umpire standing up to the stumps, the bowler then decides to bowl from 1.5 meters behind the bowling crease. So as the bowler's in umpire is focusing on the popping crease to check for the front foot no ball, the bowler's in umpire then sees the ball in his peripheral vision passing towards the batter. So for 4 points, explain your actions. Call and signal dead ball as soon as you see the ball passing you. That ball shall not count as a legal delivery in the over and needs to be rebowled. Any runs scored from this particular delivery shall be disallowed. Return the batters to their original ends if they try to run a single or try to run more than one run. Warn the bowler that any further deliveries that's bowled from behind the umpire shall be considered as time wasting. You can also speak to the fielding captain. So after telling the bowler that if you do it again, this shall be considered as time wasting, also mention this to the fielding captain. And lastly, consider standing further back from the stumps to prevent the bowler from bowling behind you again. Next question. Striker does not attempt to play at the ball. The ball then strikes the pad and deflects to a short fine leg position. The batter decides to take a quick single, and before the non-striker can make his or her ground at the keeper's end, the stumps are broken and the non-striker short of his or her ground. There's an appeal by the fielding side. For 3 points, discuss and explain the procedure. So if the umpire feels that leg byes are not to be awarded and the ball does not become dead for any reason, as soon as the ball either reaches the boundary or on the completion of the first run, the umpire needs to call and signal dead ball. In this scenario, and remember, the law tells us you only call and signal dead ball upon the completion of the first run. So in this scenario, the non-striker should be given out a run out because the ball only becomes dead on the completion of the first run. Because the first run was not completed, the fielding side are still allowed to run out either of the batters, and which they did in this case. That's why the non-striker in this scenario shall be given out a run out. So no runs shall be scored from this delivery, and the striker needs to be sent back to his or her original end. The bowler delivers a short pitch ball. The ball firstly bounces halfway down the pitch, and then the ball bounced a second time behind the popping crease. And after bouncing for a second time behind the popping crease, the striker then hits the ball straight to the mid-off fielder. After the mid-off fielder catches the ball, the mid-off fielder then saw the non-striker, who is the better batter, being outside his crease. The mid-off fielder then throws the wicket down at the bowler's end with the non-striker short of his ground. Is an appeal by the fielding side. So when it comes to no ball for calling and signaling a no ball for a ball bouncing more than once, what is the criteria that you need to look at? The ball needs to bounce a second time before it reaches the popping crease. So because the ball bounced a second time in this scenario after the popping crease, this constitutes a fair delivery. So in this scenario, because it's a fair delivery, the striker should be given out caught because the middle fielder caught the ball cleanly. The non-striker will not be run out. And why would the striker be out caught and the non-striker not run out? Because according to the law, caught takes precedence over any other dismissal except for bowled. The bowler, so while delivering the ball, accidentally breaks the wicket with his knee. Then the ball after the bowler delivered the ball then goes and hits the striker's wicket. So the law tells us that either umpire to call and signal no ball if the bowler breaks the wicket at any time after the ball comes into play and before the completion of the stride after the delivery stride. And this shall include any clothing or any other object that falls from his or her person. And in this instance, the bowler delivered the ball, but the law tells us, and after delivering the ball then went on to hit the wicket. So the law tells us because the bowler delivered the ball and it went against the striker's wicket, but the striker cannot be out bowled, and the reason for that is either umpire had to call and signal no ball, and there are only 3 ways of being dismissed of a no ball. What are those 3 ways? Hit the ball twice, obstructing the field, and run out. So bowled is not one of the methods that you can be dismissed of a no ball. That's why in this scenario or the previous question, the striker will be not out bowled because the delivery was a no ball. So law 24 speaks about fielder's absence and substitutes. So we'll start off with substitutes. So when it comes to substitute, the law is clear here. Who shall allow a substitute fielder? Only the umpire shall allow a substitute fielder. The fielding side, the fielding captain, the coaches, they have no say whether a substitute fielder should be allowed or not. It is for the umpire to decide whether they shall allow a substitute fielder or not. So when allowing a substitute fielder, there are 2 things that the umpire needs to take into account. Firstly, the umpires needs to be satisfied that a fielder has been injured or became ill, and that this injury or illness occurred during the game. So if the umpires are satisfied that either the fielder became injured or ill, and the injury or illness occurred during the game, the umpires shall allow a substitute fielder. Also, if there was a wholly acceptable reason for for a fielder leaving the field or not being able to take the field, the umpire shall allow a substitute fielder. An example of a wholly acceptable reason if there is a student and let's say perhaps he needs to write an exam early in the morning, let's say the Saturday morning, and the exam is from 8 o'clock till 11 o'clock with the game starting at 10 o'clock, and the fielder is not able to take the field, that is a wholly acceptable reason why that fielder is not able to take the field, and the umpire shall allow a substitute fielder to take his or her place. So after the umpires has now allowed a substitute fielder, whether under point 1 or point 2 above, that substitute fielder shall not be allowed to bowl, nor allowed to bat or act as captain. So the only thing that substitute fielder is allowed to do is to field. The law does allow the substitute to keep wicket, but that needs to happen with the consent of the umpires. So if a substitute comes on and that substitute wants to keep wicket, the umpires needs to give consent. There needs to be a reason why the substitute fielder is coming on and why he or she is now taking the gloves. That's why it's important. Umpires, you need to give consent if the substitute wants to take over the wicket keeping duties. So a fielder absent or a fielder leaving the field of play. Just quickly brief background on how this law worked many years ago, and you'll see the changes that was done to the laws, and you'll also understand why these changes were done to the law. So many years ago, fielder could leave the field of play or could be absent of the field of play for any reason. Doesn't have to give a reason. If the fielder wanted to go off, the umpires had to allow the fielders to go off. Fielders started then abusing this law. Fielders would go off they would make up a reason, they would lie, they would fake an injury, they would say they're injured, they would go off, they would put their feet up and they would rest. So what bowlers would do is, let's say it was a 4-day game, um, the opening bowler would bowl a 5 or 6 over spell. The opening bowler would then go to the umpire and tell the umpire, I've injured Miami. Can I go off? The umpire then allows the substitute fielder to come on. That bowler would then go sit in the dressing room with his feet up and will only return when it's time for him or her to bowl the second spell. So that the bowlers would then do that throughout the day. Even batters was abusing the law. Close to the end of the field, let's say Team A's innings, the opening bat of Team B, let's say Team A's is 8 or 9 wickets down. The opening batter of Team B would then fake an injury, go off the field, put his or her feet up, relax, because knowing that soon it will be the team B's opportunity to go into bat. So fielders, bowlers abuse this law, faking injuries, batters abuse this law. The lawmakers then decided, oh, we need to tighten this law a bit, and we will now look at the changes they've made to the law. So if a fielder fails to take the field at the start of play, or once the game has started, the fielder needs to leave the field of play. Firstly, the fielder comes to the umpire, and the fielder needs to inform the umpire of the reason why he or she is not on the field, or why he or she needs to leave the field of play. So, practical advice as well. So as soon as the player comes to you, let's say player X comes to you saying, I need umpire, I need to leave the field. I've tweaked my Miami. I need to get a better treatment. The umpire is then giving you the reason. What you then need to do is take out your small notebook, write down the name of the fielder, and write down the reason why the fielder is leaving the field of play. Also, write down the time that fielder left the field of play. In point number 3, you'll see why it's important for you to write down the time that the fielder needed to leave the field. So, second point. The fielder that left the field shall then not come onto the field of play during a session without the consent of the umpire. The umpire shall give such consent to return to the field of play as soon as practicable. So, in practice, what you do, once the fielder came to you saying, umpire, Miami, I need to have a look at, you'll then allow him to go off. You'll allow a substitute to come field in his or her place. You write down in your notebook the time that the fielder left the field, as well as the reason why. Then you will tell the fielder that's leaving the field of play, player, please, when you return, just indicate to me when you are able to come back onto the field of play. Also, tell his captain or the fielding captain that, captain, I see player X is leaving. He's going to have his hamstring attended to. When player X returns, please let me know. You will later on see why it's important for the player that's returning to inform you that he or she is returning to the field of play. There's quite a stiff penalty if that injured player that's now coming back onto the field does not inform the umpire of his or return. So now player X has now returned to the field of play. He's asked the umpire the permission. What must the umpire then do? Umpire then write down that player X has returned to the field of play and also write down the time that player X returned to the field of play. Point number 3, and you will now see why it's so important that you wrote down the times when the player X left and when the player returned, because that player shall not be permitted to bowl until that player have been back on the field of play for the same amount of time, and this is called penalty time, as the injured player was off the field, up to a max of 90 minutes. So just to give an example of how the law works. So player X comes to you, informs you, I've injured my hamstring, I need to go have treatment. You'll allow him to go off, you'll allow a substitute to come on, you write down the time, and let's use in our example, the injured player left at 10:30. You will tell the injured fielder that's now leaving, please, when you return, inform either of the umpires that you are returning to the field of play, and we will then give you consent to return. Upon the return of the injured fielder, or is now fit again fielder, you write down the time that the player returned. So let's say the player left at 10:30. The player returned at 10:50. So the law tells us that the player, how long was the player off? Player was off for 20 minutes. So that player shall not be allowed to bowl until that player has now fielded for 20 minutes. So the player needs to be the same amount of time on the field as the player was off the field. So if player left at 10:30, the player returned at 10:50, that is 20 minutes. So when can player X bowl again? Return at 10:50. So he needs to be on the field for 20 minutes. So player X can bowl again at 11:10. So the practical advice, so as soon as you've calculated when the player X can bowl again, please inform him or her the time that he or she can bowl. In our example, the player X can bowl at 11:10. Also inform the fielding captain at when player X can bowl again. So just to summarize point 1, 2, and 3. So when it comes to a player leaving, player can leave. You write down time is leaving and the reason for leaving. And when the player returns, also write down that time, because that is important, because the amount of time that the player was off the field before that player can bowl, that player needs to serve that time or need to feel the same amount of time before he or she is allowed to bowl. And it's up to a max of 90 minutes. So what does this max of 90 minutes mean? The injured player leaves at, let's say, Cindy leaves at 11 o'clock to have a hamstring looked at, and she only returns to the field of play at, let's say, 4 o'clock the afternoon. It's been quite a lengthy absence. 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock. It's 5 hours that Cindy was off. If we just take off roughly lunch and tea, that's hours. So Cindy was off for 4 hours. But the law tells us up to a max of 90 minutes. So Cindy does not need to have to wait for 4 hours before she can bowl again. She can bowl again 90 minutes later. So if she returned to the field at 4 o'clock, Cindy can bowl again 90 minutes later, which is at 17:30. So that is how the law was tweaked or changed slightly. So we now allow fielders, if they tell you they're injured, we'll allow them to go off, but they need to field for that same amount of time that they were off before they can bowl again, or the same applies to batting, before they can bowl or bat again. So if the player leaves the field before having served all his or her penalty time, the balance is carried forward as unserved penalty time. Penalty time does not disappear. Penalty time gets seen as, let's say, a bank balance. It will, every time the fielder goes off, you will add the time that he's gone off to his balance. So let's say Johnny was off for 20 minutes. Johnny now owes us 20 minutes. There's now 20 minutes in the bank. There are only two ways that Johnny can reduce penalty time. The first way is if by physically being on the field of play. If you're on the field and you're fielding, that is how you reduce your penalty time. The other way to reduce penalty time, we will handle in 2 slides time. But what point number 3 is telling us is penalty time does not disappear. If you still owe penalty time, we will carry penalty time forward, whether it's the next day, whether it's the next innings, it does not disappear. Also, point number 4, the amount of playing time for which a player is off the field shall be added to any unserved penalty time. So, example of this, if Johnny leaves the field at 10:30 and Johnny only comes back at 11 o'clock, how much penalty time does Johnny owe us? 30 minutes. So upon Johnny's return, when can Johnny bowl again? Because he was off for 30 minutes. Johnny needs to field for 30 minutes before he can bowl again. So at 11:30, Johnny can only bowl again. So what point number 4 is telling us is, so let's say in our example, Johnny left at 10:30, he came back at 11 o'clock. So now upon Johnny's return and before returning, he needs to get permission of either of the umpires before returning. Once the umpires gave consent, the umpires need to inform Johnny, you've been off for 30 minutes. You can only bowl again at 11:30. Also inform the fielding captain when Johnny can bowl again. So now Johnny returned at 11 o'clock, but we informed Johnny that he can only bowl at 11:30. But after 10 minutes, Johnny left the field again. Let's say again, Johnny says, oh, I've injured my knee, I now need to go off. So at 10 past 11:10, Johnny went off the field again. So how does penalty time work? I said to you, it's work as a balance. You take the total time that he was off. In Johnny's case, when he returned at 11 o'clock, Johnny owed us 10 minutes. Then at 10 past 11, when Johnny left again, so I said that how do you reduce penalty time? There are two ways: by being physically on the field, by fielding. That's the one way to reduce penalty time. The second way we will get to in 2 slides' time. So Johnny at 11 o'clock owed us 30 minutes. Johnny then fielded for 10 minutes because at 10 past 11, Johnny left the field again. So as I explained, because uh, once you fielding, you can reduce your penalty time by the amount of time that you've been on the field. Because Johnny was on the field for 10 minutes, at 10 past 11, when Johnny left the field for the second time, Johnny owes us 20 minutes. How did I get to 20 minutes? At 11 o'clock when he returned, he owed us 30 minutes. Now Johnny fielded for 10 minutes. So at 10 past 11, when Johnny left the field for the second time to have his knee looked at, Johnny owed us 20 minutes. So I took the 30 minutes, and because he fielded for 10 minutes, I've subtracted the 10 minutes from the 30. So when Johnny left the field for the second time, Johnny owes us 10 minutes. Johnny owes us 20 minutes. So now we know, we write in our book, Johnny's not on the field anymore. But he still owes us 20 minutes of penalty time. That penalty time doesn't disappear. Now Johnny returns 20 minutes later. So at 11:30, Johnny returns. So he informs the umpire that he wants to come on. The umpire gives them consent. How much penalty time does Johnny owe us now? So now you need to add the penalty time. So what does he owe us? He owes us 20 minutes from the previous time that he left. He was now also off for 20 minutes. So now you take the 20 minutes that he owes us and you add this new 20 minutes. So now in total, Johnny owes us 40 minutes. So upon Johnny's return at 11:30, Johnny can you'll inform Johnny and the fielding captain, but that he owes us 40 minutes and he can only bowl again at 12:10. Scheduled intervals. What are scheduled intervals? The close of play on the one day and the start of play the next day. Intervals for meals, which is your lunch and your tea. Interval for drinks, intervals for change between innings interval, any other agreed interval. Those are all examples of scheduled intervals. So the law tells us that when you get to scheduled intervals, you should not add this to any unserved penalty time that the player owes, nor does it count as penalty time served. To use an example to illustrate this point. Let's say lunch is at 12 o'clock and lunch is for 40 minutes from 12 till 12:40. Cindy leaves the field at 11:40 to have a knee looked at. So what do? Cindy comes to you, umpire, I need to have my knee looked at. You'll allow Cindy to go off, a substitute to come on. You write down in your notebook Cindy and the reason Cindy left the field and the time that Cindy left the field. Cindy left the field at 11:40. Lunch is at 12 o'clock. So now we get to 12 o'clock. How much penalty time does Cindy owe us? And when it comes to penalty time, you can only penalize a player that's not on the field for playing time that player is not on the field of play. Only only playing time you will add as penalty time. So in our example, Cindy, 11:40, she left the field. Lunch is at 12 o'clock. So now we get to lunch. As we walk off the field for lunch, good practice at every break, write down the amount of penalty time that the fielder owes us. In this case, Cindy, because good practice is after the break to inform the injured fielder, Cindy in our case, and to inform the fielding captain when uh, Cindy is allowed to bowl again. So good practice. At the start of the break, quickly calculate how much penalty time the injured fielder, in our case Cindy, owes us. So Cindy went off at 11:40. We took lunch at 12 o'clock. So as we're walking off, we write down, we calculate Cindy off at 11:40. It's now 12 o'clock. So at the start of lunchtime, Cindy owes us 20 minutes. Lunch is 40 minutes. What time does lunch end? 12:40. So at 12:40, Cindy walks out onto the field with the fielding side. And Cindy informs the umpires that, umpires, I am now fit and I'm back onto the field. So how much penalty time does Cindy owe us? Remember, at the start of lunch, Cindy owed us 20 minutes. So lunch ended at 12:40. So as you're walking onto the field and Cindy informing you that she's now fit and she's coming back on, you will inform Cindy how much penalty time does Cindy owe you. Cindy owes you only 20 minutes. The scheduled interval, your lunch interval, shall not be added to penalty time that Cindy owes you. It was lunchtime. Everyone was off the field of play. There was no field play taking place. Everyone was enjoying lunch. So the scheduled interval will not count for Cindy, nor will it count against Cindy. So point I'm trying to make, you will not add the lunch interval to penalty time that Cindy owes us. Cindy will only owe us 20 minutes. Earlier I mentioned there are two ways that you can reduce penalty time. I've covered the one way, where the firstly you can reduce your penalty time by being actually on the field of play. On the field of play. That's the one way to reduce your penalty time. So your penalty time, if you was off for let's say an hour, your penalty time will reduce by the amount of time that you fielding, that you're on the field of play. So that's the first way to reduce penalty time. The second way to reduce penalty time, and this is when there is a unscheduled break in play. So this is now the second way to reduce the penalty time of a fielder. So how do we take this unscheduled break in play into account, and what does the law tell us? How can penalty time reduce because of this unscheduled break? Firstly, if there was an unscheduled break in play, the injured fielder can offset that unscheduled break in play against penalty time that he or she owes, provided, and there's two criteria that needs to happen. Firstly, the fielder who was on the field at the start of play, the fielder was on the field at the start of the interruption, and that fielder needs to take the field at the resumption of play or his or her side is now batting. So what point number 1 is telling us is that you can offset the unscheduled break against penalty time that the fielder owes us if the fielder was on the field at the start of the interruption, and at the resumption of play after the interruption or the unscheduled break, the fielder takes the field of play. I'll use an example to illustrate point number 1. So John leaves the field at 10:30 to have his hamstring looked at. Umpire writes down John's name in his notebook and also the time that John left the field of play. 10:30 and the reason to have his hamstring looked at. John returns to the field of play at 11 o'clock. So upon his return, he asked the umpire's permission. Umpires gives consent. John returns at 11. So first thing you do is you calculate the penalty time that John owes us. In this case, 30 minutes. So you will inform John that he owes us 30 minutes and you'll inform the fielding captain. So John can bowl again at 11:30. After 10 minutes, at 11:10, it starts raining. And it rains for 10 minutes up until 11:20 when play can resume again at 11:20. So remember, John went off at 10:30. He came back at 11. So he owes us 30 minutes. At 11:10, when it started raining and players had to leave the field of play. So again, good practice is, as you leave the field of play, you ask yourself, are there any fielders off the field? And if yes, you need to calculate the amount of penalty time that fielder owes us at the start of the interruption. So in our example, Johnny came back at 11. He owed us 30 minutes. At 11:10, it started raining. So one of the ways to reduce your penalty time is by actual to field. So at the start of the rain interruption at 11:10, Johnny was fielding for 10 minutes. So at the start of the rain interruption, Johnny owes us how many minutes? 20 minutes. How did I get to 20 minutes? He was off for 30 minutes. He fielded for 10 minutes. 30 minus 10 is 20. So now we know at the start of the rain interruption how much penalty time Johnny owes us. So now point number 1 says that when there's an unscheduled break in play, you can offset the unscheduled break against the penalty time that the injured player owes us, but the fielder needed to be on the field of play at the start of the interruption, and the fielder needs to take the field at the resumption of play after the interruption. So the question you need to ask yourself is, was John on the field of play when it started raining? And the answer to that question is yes. So because John was on the field of play, because John was on the field of play at the start of the interruption, the law tells us you can now offset the length of that interruption against penalty time that John owes us. Okay, but there are 2 criteria that needs to be met under point number 1. Firstly, John had to be on the field of play at the start of the interruption. Secondly, John needs to take the field with the fielding side at the resumption of play after the rain break. And let's assume John took the field with the fielding side. So left the field at 11:10, play restarted at 11:20. So how long was the rain interruption? How long was the unscheduled break? 10 minutes. So at the start of the rain interruption, how much time did John owe us? 20 minutes. How long was the rain interruption? 10 minutes. It was an unscheduled break. Can you offset that unscheduled break against time that John owes us? Let's see if John meets the criteria on the point number 1. Was John on the field of play when it started raining? Yes. Did John take the field at the resumption of play? Yes. So now you can offset that 10 minutes, 10-minute rain interruption against penalty time that John owes us. So at the start of the interruption, John owed us 20 minutes. It rained for 10 minutes. So 20 minutes minus 10 is 10 minutes. So when play resumes at 11:20 after the rain interruption, you will inform John that, John, you owe us 10 more minutes, so you can bowl again at 11:30, and you will inform the fielding captain that John can bowl again at 11:30. So point number 1 covered when we can offset an unscheduled break against penalty time that the injured fielder owes us. But the criteria there that needed to be met was to offset it. The injured fielder, in our case John, had to be on the field of play at the start of the interruption and needs to take the field on the resumption of play. The second point is, the difference here is, in the first instance, the injured fielder, or John, was on the field of play when it started raining. In the second point is, the injured fielder, John, is not on the field of play when it starts to rain. So now what do you do? So the first one is on the field. You can then offset the unscheduled break against penalty time that he owes. But the two criteria, he had to be on the field of play at the start of the interruption, and he needs to take the field when play restarts after the interruption. Second point, the injured fielder is not on the field when it starts to rain. So what do you then do? Because the injured fielder was not on the field at the start of the interruption, that injured fielder now needs to notify either of the umpires in person. It needs to be that fielder. It cannot be the captain. It cannot be the coach. It needs to be the injured fielder. And he or she needs to notify the umpire in person as soon as he or she is able to participate or is fit again. So he or she will go to the umpire and say, umpire, I am fit again. So that's the first thing. And then secondly, the fielders now inform the umpire that I'm fit again. And that fielder now needs to take the field with the fielding side at the resumption of play after the rain interruption. So just to use an example to illustrate point number 2. So at 11 o'clock, at 10:30, Cindy leaves the field of play to have a knee looked at. She returns at 11 o'clock. So upon her return, you will inform her that, Cindy, you're off for 30 minutes. You can bowl again at 11:30. Also inform the fielding captain. So now Cindy's on the field for 30 so he returns at 11 o'clock. She's now on the field until 11:30. So 11:30, Cindy now can bowl again. But now at 11:40, Cindy leaves the field again. So has Cindy served all of a penalty time? Yes, she has. So at 11:40, when Cindy leaves the field, she doesn't owe us anything. So Cindy goes off at 11:40. At 12 o'clock, it starts to rain. So in practice, what do you do? So the first thing is, as you walk off the field at 12 o'clock, when it starts raining, you ask yourself, are there any players off the field? If the answer is yes, you need to calculate the penalty time as at the start of the rain interruption. So at the start of the rain interruption, how much penalty time does Cindy owe us? 20 minutes. She left at 11:40. She returned at it started raining at 12 o'clock. So at 12 o'clock, Cindy owes us 20 minutes. So now it rains for 10 minutes. So now play can resume again at 11:10. So now you need to ask yourself the question. We now know you can offset an unscheduled break against penalty time that the injured fielder owes us. Do you apply point number 1 or point number 2? Point number 1 says the fielder has to be on the field of play at the start of the interruption. So we know Cindy was not on the field when it started raining. So we cannot apply point number 1. Point number 2, and this handles when a player was not on the field of play at the start of the interruption. So what must that player now do? That player needs to notify the umpire in person. If that player does not notify the umpire in person, then the player cannot or you cannot offset the unscheduled break against penalty time that the player owes. So in our case, let's for argument's sake, Cindy owes us 20 minutes at the start of the interruption, and the player resumed that 10 minutes later at 10 past 12. So Cindy owed us 20 minutes at 12 o'clock. Play resumed at 10 past. Can Cindy offset that 10 minutes against penalty time that she owes us? No, she cannot. And the reason is we need to apply point number 2. Cindy was not on the field at when it started to rain. Nor did Cindy notify either of the umpires in person that she's fit to take field again. And because he did not notify either of the umpires, Cindy now cannot offset that 10 minutes. So when play starts at 12:10 or restarts at 12:10, you will inform the fielding captain and Cindy. And if Cindy takes the field, you still owe us 20 minutes. You can only bowl at 12:30 again. So that is when an example when the injured player does not inform the umpire in person during the unscheduled break that the injured player is fit again. Now let's use an example where the injured player notifies the umpire in person when he or she is able to participate again. So let's use again Cindy as an example. So Cindy leaves the field at 11:30. It starts raining at 12 o'clock. So now first thing you do as you walk off the field when it starts to rain, are there any fielders off the field? In our case, yes. How much penalty time do they owe us? So Cindy went off at 11. It's now 12 o'clock. Cindy owes us 30 minutes as at the start of the interruption. Next question that you need to ask yourself is, was the injured fielder on the field of play when it started raining? In our case, no. So you cannot apply point number 1. You need to apply point number 2. Because the Cindy was off the field at the start of the interruption, what does Cindy need to do to offset the unscheduled break against penalty time that she owes? She needs to personally notify either of the umpires when she's fit again. So let's say it starts raining at 12. We know Cindy owes us 30 minutes. It rains now for 30 minutes and play can restart at 12:30. Cindy came to the umpire's room at 12:15. informing the umpires, I'm fit to go. I'm fit again. I can resume after the interruption. So when did Cindy inform you? At 12:15 only. So only once he starts notifying you, from that moment, you can then start offsetting the interruption against penalty time that he owes. So only at 12:15, Cindy notified you, play restarted at 12:30. Cindy took the field with the fielding side after the resumption of play, after the interruption. You will inform Cindy, you owed us 30 minutes at the start of the interruption. Because you only informed us at 12:15 that you're fit again, we can only offset 15 minutes of the interruption or the unscheduled break of your penalty time. So from 12:15 to 12:30, only those 15 minutes can be offset. So 30 minutes in total at the start of the interruption, 30 minus 15. So when play resumes at 12:30, you will inform Cindy and the fielding captain that she can bowl again at 12:45. I mentioned earlier that unserved penalty time shall be carried forward into the next day and next innings of the match. It does not disappear. There are times where penalty time will not be incurred. Remember I said earlier why this law was changed, because players abuse this. They would fake injuries. They would lie and say their hammy needs treatment. They need to go. Meantime, they just were tired, or they just want to put their feet up and go relax in the dressing room. And because of all these lies and not knowing when it's the truth, when it's fake, the lawmakers tweaked the law and said, okay, we're not medical doctors, so we don't know whether you're lying or not. But what we will do is the amount of time that you're off, you need to be that same amount of time back on before you can bowl again. So that is how the lawmakers changed the law. But there are times when no penalty time will apply. And the first instance here is when a fielder suffers an external blow, and the emphasis here is on external blow during the game, and then because of the external blow, the player then needs to leave the field of play. So emphasis here is on external blow. So something needs to happen while play is in progress on the field of play, and the law makes mention here of, and the words they use is external blow. So if there's an external blow that happened to any of the fielders, penalty time will not be incurred. I'll use an example that will illustrate point number one much better. And again, I want to emphasize an external blow needs to happen while play is in progress during the match. So examples of external blows: short leg fielder, spinner bowling, and there's a silly point standing 2 meters from the striker. Spinner bowls a short ball, striker then cuts the ball. The silly point jumps, but the ball then goes against the sin, and the silly point didn't have sin guards on, and it goes against the sin of the silly point fielder. So the sin starts swelling up. Physio comes out. Physio says, I need to take him off to put some ice on it. So that is an example of an external blow where the ball went against the sin of the silly point fielder. External blow that happened. Ball against sin. Happened on the field of play. It happened in front of everyone's eyes. The umpire saw it. So this is not the fielder trying to fake an injury here. We saw what happened. And in those most instances, when an external blow happens and the injured player needs to leave the field of play, no penalty time will be incurred. So if the silly point fielder goes off at 11 o'clock and returns at 11:30, and uh, the captain asks you when can the fielder bowl, you will tell the captain no penalty time was incurred because it was an external blow. That's just one example. There are other examples. The ball gets hit in the air and two fielders converge towards the ball and they run into each other, and the ball lands in between the two of them. But now, let's say that there was quite a heavy clash between the two fielders. Physio comes on. One of them needs treatment, and the physio tells us, I need to get some ice on the midriff section of the fielder. It needs to go off quickly. That's an external blow, happened on the field of play where you saw it. So players not trying to fake anything. You will allow a player to go off, substitute to come on, and you will that injured fielder will not incur any penalty time. So the important part here is external blow on the field of play during the match. Also, no penalty time will be incurred if the player has been absent or leave the field for a wholly acceptable reason. I used an example of a player needed to write an exam on, let's say, the Saturday morning, and the exam was from 8 till 11 o'clock. A player only returns to the field at 11:30, but play started at 10 o'clock. So upon return at 11:30, that player will not incur any penalty time because that is an example of a wholly acceptable reason why the player was not on the field of play at 10 o'clock. So no penalty time to be incurred. Earlier, I mentioned it's important that you tell the player when the player leaves the field of play, please tell me when you return. And also tell the fielding captain, when your injured player returns to the field of play, please inform either of the umpires. Why is that important? There's quite a stiff penalty if they do come onto the field without the umpire's permission. So the injured fielder comes onto the field of play without the umpire's permission. What happens? As soon as the player touches the ball immediately becomes dead. Then the umpire to award 5 penalty runs to the batting side. Runs completed by the batters shall be scored, including the run in progress if they crossed at the instant of the offence. The ball do not count as one for the over. And the umpires needs to inform everyone, captains, batters, everyone, and also need to report this to the governing body. So you can see there's quite a stiff penalty if player comes onto the field, or the injured player comes onto the field without the permission of the umpire. That's why it's important. Mention it to the player. Also mention it to his or her captain. Because if you do need to then apply this law, the player then sneaks on, and sometimes it can happen. You'll have a drinks break, and then suddenly the player, while the drinks, you enjoying a drinks break, the player will come onto the field, or they'll make a quick swap while standing. The player, the substitute was standing at fine leg or third man, and they'll make a quick swap. So it can happen. That they quickly come onto the field without you noticing. So if you do need to apply this law, you can tell the captain, I've told you, let me know when the injured player comes back. You've also informed the injured player. So if you do need to apply this law, you can then apply this law. In my example, where you do see the player sneaking on, just a bit of practical advice. So what I do is, there are times, and even if you tell the player and his captain, somehow they still forget and they'll sneak onto the field. Not sneak, but they'll come on, let's say, during a drinks break without you noticing. So now play starts, and you then notice, let's say during the over, oh, I see, yeah, it's Cindy's back on the field of play, but no one told me, or no one informed both of the umpires. So what I do is, I address it immediately. I'll just call Cindy. Ask you nicely to let me know when you're back, and I'll tell the captain, "Are you back now?" Obviously, she's back, but I'll just, you know, I try to work with the fielder and the captain, and not wait until I see Cindy on the field, but I won't wait until Cindy touches the ball, and when she touches the ball, then I'll apply these 4 bullet points. If I do pick it up and I do notice Cindy's back on, or sneak back on, I'll just mention it. And I say, Captain, please, there's quite a stiff punishment if um, Cindy had to touch the ball, and I didn't notice her. So please, next time, please. So that's just my method of umpiring. But there's nothing wrong if you had to wait, and it's not if Cindy didn't inform you and she touched the ball, um, um, during the over, and she didn't inform you that she's back on, you can apply the law, but I prefer applying, working with the fielding side. Tom, I'm now passing the ball to you. That is my bit for this evening. Thank you so much. Over to you, Tom.
Thanks, Abdullah, and good evening to the candidates. I'm going to be taking us through Law 28 this evening, and then we shall get into the revision questions on both the laws, and then we shall open the floor up to questions and answers. I already see 2 questions that have come in on the chat box, so we'll go through those after the revision questions. Law 28 is to do with the fielder, and Abdullah's already touched on a fielder returning to the field without the permission of the umpires and coming into contact with the ball. So we know what the procedure there is. Here we shall look at how a fielder is allowed to field the ball, and if the fielder fields the ball illegally, even though they are on the field and have permission to be on the field, if they field the ball illegally, what are the punishments for that? So the law says that a fielder may field the ball with any part of his or her person. However, he or she will be deemed to have fielded the ball illegally if, while the ball is in play, he or she willfully uses anything other than part of his or her person to field the ball. So on the next slide, we will see a fielder using his cap, having removed it from its normal position on top of his head to field the ball. So that is illegal as per law. You can see point number 2 here says, if while the ball is in play, he or she willfully extends his or her clothing and uses it to field the ball, or discards a piece of clothing, equipment, or any other object which subsequently makes contact with the ball. So jerseys need to be worn, caps need to be worn, helmets need to be worn by the fielder if they are to be used to field the ball. You cannot remove any clothing or equipment and use that clothing or equipment piece to extend the body effectively and field with it. Quite importantly, it is not illegal fielding if the ball in play makes contact with a piece of clothing, equipment, or any other object which has accidentally fallen from the fielder's person. It does happen quite often that when a fielder is chasing after a ball, the cap flies off from the head of the fielder. If the fielder then throws the ball and the throw hits that cap that is now lying on the field, that would not be considered illegal fielding because that cap flew off the fielder's head accidentally. It was not willfully discarded. Okay, so there is a big difference between an item of clothing or equipment accidentally falling off a fielder's person versus the willful discard of a piece of clothing or equipment like a cap or a helmet being placed anywhere on the field by a fielder. That is a willful act versus an accidental act when a fielder is running and chasing the ball and with the wind blowing the cap off. That shall not be considered illegal fielding if the ball is thrown to that cap that flew off the fielder's head. Okay, so what do we do when we see a piece of illegal fielding? The ball shall immediately become dead. However, it is good umpiring practice for you to call and signal no ball, dead ball. Why? Because not all fielders or players know that illegal fielding is punishable by 5 penalty runs. There was an incident a couple of months ago where Baba Azam, captain of Pakistan, jokingly picked up a wicketkeeper's glove that had been discarded by the wicketkeeper and actually received the ball, the throw from the outfield. And so because the wicketkeeper glove does not belong to Baba Azam, he's not a wicketkeeper. Once the ball made contact with the wicketkeeper's glove, it was deemed to be illegal fielding by Baba Azam, and the ball became automatically dead. However, Baba Azam didn't know that he was in the wrong, and so good umpiring practice there was that the umpire called and signaled dead ball before awarding 5 penalty runs to the batting side. Of course, we must also signal no ball or wide if applicable. Those always stand. Any runs completed by the batters shall be credited to the batting side together with the run in progress if the batters had already crossed during that run in progress at the instant of the offense. Okay, so when the ball becomes dead is when we look to see where the batters are in that run in progress. Have they crossed? If yes, then that run will also count along with the runs completed before that. If they have not crossed for that particular run in progress, then only the runs completed before the illegal fielding will count. Quite importantly, this is one of the times where the ball has been bowled, but because of the illegal fielding, it shall not count as one of the over and shall obviously have to be re-bowled. In addition, the umpire shall award 5 penalty runs to the batting side, and we shall inform and report. Okay, so quite a few things to do here, and important in the exam to list all of these. One that always gets omitted is that no ball or wide shall stand if applicable. I know it is not usually in the question whether the ball was a no ball or a wide. Even if it wasn't a no ball or a wide, guys, you still get marks for mentioning that the penalty for a no ball or wide shall stand if applicable. So please remember that. That will help you get over the 80% mark in the exam. So that is it from Law 28. Remember that we are only covering the parts of the law that are examined in the level 3 exam. So that is why we only touched on one matter of Law 28 this evening. We're now going to go into revision questions, which cover Law 24 and 25 and are similar to what you can expect in the level 3 exam. I'm going to ask Abdullah to help me find volunteers. There are only 3 questions this evening, but they are all quite involved, and so we will probably need more than one answerer for each question, especially with the penalty time questions. It's important to break down the penalty time questions event by event. So what I like to do is I like to say, note obviously when the player goes off the field, and then every episode or every incident that happens after that, you note how much penalty time they have that they need to serve, or you note how much penalty time they have served, and so you calculate at every incident what penalty time is still owed by them. So let's go through the question together. Opening bowler Paul pulls up with a groin strain after his 5th over at 10:48 during a provincial 3-day match. Just going back to the level 2 exam where there was 1 or 2 questions on penalty time. Somebody asked what time the match started, and if you know your penalty time calculations, you will know that you don't need to know what time the match started. Okay, it's pretty much irrelevant in terms of what penalty time a fielder needs to serve, unless of course the fielder did not take the field from the start of play, but that's never the case in the examples in the exam. So don't worry or don't panic if they don't mention the start time of the match. This being a perfect example of that. So opening bowler Paul pulls up with a groin strain after his 5th over at 10:48 during a provincial 3-day match. After on-field treatment, he leaves the field at 10:50. Okay, so we need to know what to do with that 2 minutes, 10:48 to 10:50. Does the penalty time start at 10:48 or does the penalty time start at 10:50? Think about that before you raise your hand to help me out with this question. There's a drinks break from 11:10 to 11:14. So what I like to do is I like to say he's been off from 10:50 until 11:10. At the drinks break at 11:10, how much penalty time does he owe us? Then we say from 11:10 to 11:14, it is a scheduled break. What do we do with the scheduled break? Abdullah has told us we need to put that on paper for our exam. He comes back onto the field of play at 11:40. So then we say 11:14 to 11:40 is how many minutes? And then at 11:40, what is the total amount of penalty time owing by Paul? Okay, lunch is taken at 12:20. So then we need to calculate from 11:40 to 12:20. How much time is that? Is that time on the field? Yes, it reduces the penalty time because he's now served that penalty time. And so, like Abdullah said, at every interval, you need to calculate how much time Paul is owing us. Because why? After lunch, captain throws the ball to Paul and he wants to bowl. Now we need to know if he is allowed to bowl or not the first over after lunch. So, Abdullah, going through this scenario, do we have any volunteers that can tell me, first of all, what time, okay, what do we do with the 10:48 to 10:50? And then what time does penalty time start accruing?
Tom, we have 6 six hands that are currently raised. The first hand that was raised was Jitindra. Jitindra, can you unmute yourself and answer the first question, please?
So the first part comes is between 10:48 and 10:50. So to my knowledge, the penalty time occurs only on the playing time, and from 10:48 to 10:50 there was no play. So obviously that doesn't count for penalty. So then from 10:50 to 11:10 is 20 minutes, and 11:10 to 11:14 is a scheduled break. So again that doesn't count. So till 11:14, it's only 20 minutes which is penalty time, and then he comes back at 11:40. So from 11:14 to 11:40, this is another 26 minutes. So already 20 minutes and this 26, total 46 minutes he owes. Then lunch is taken at 12. Generally it is for 40 minutes. So till 1 o'clock it is taken. So hello, am
Yeah.
I in little speed or like okay?
I'm able to follow you, Jitendra, so carry
Oh,
on.
I'm sorry for yeah, okay, sorry. So then till 12:20 he owes 46 minutes overall. That is 10:50 to 11:10 is 20 minutes, and 11:14 to 11:40 is 20 minutes, 26 minutes. So that is overall 46 minutes he owes. So at 12:20 generally 40 minutes lunch break is taken, which is till 1 o'clock, that is 13 hours. And the captain wants him to bowl, which is not possible because he owes 46 minutes. He has served. I'm really sorry for that. Done a mistake here. He comes back onto the field at 11:40. Lunch is taken at 12:20. So 40 minutes he has served out of 10:50 to 11:10 and 11:14 to 11:40. That is 46 minus 40 is 6 minutes he owes. So only any time after 1 o'clock in 6 minutes he can bowl. Yeah, that's my answer.
Fantastic, Jitendra. That is almost the textbook answer. I was going to ask for other people to talk us through the rest of it, but you went ahead and
I'm really sorry. I'm really sorry. I'm sorry for that.
no problem. That was very well done. Just a little bit more detail on those 2 minutes. So the umpires need to take the time from when Paul leaves the field, which is 10:50. The 2 minutes that were taken for the treatment on the field will be extenuating circumstances and will be taken into consideration to calculate the fielding team's over rate. So you're quite right. They are not playing time, so they are not used in the calculation of the penalty time. So there's two ways that you can calculate the penalty time owing. You used the method that I like, which is breaking it down incident by incident. The memorandum uses the full time that he was off the field, 10:50 to 11:40, which is 50 minutes. But then it notes that the drinks break was 4 minutes, 11:10 to 11:14. And we know that the scheduled break does not count for or against a player. So that means we take 4 minutes off the 50 minutes that he was off the field. And that's how we get to your same answer of 46 minutes when he returns to the field at 11:40. That is how much penalty time he owes us. Lunch was taken at 12:20, so Paul was on the field for 40 minutes from 11:40 to 12:20. As you quite rightly said, at lunchtime, he owed us 46 minus 40 minutes that he had served, so he owes us 6 minutes. The lunch interval is a scheduled break from 12:20 to 1300. and will not count for or against Paul because it is a scheduled interval. Therefore, as you said, Jitendra, well done. You will inform the fielding captain when you come back onto the field after lunch. Okay, don't wait for the fielding captain to give the ball to Paul. You should, as you're walking down the stairs at Newlands and onto the field, if the fielding team walks onto the field with you, you tell the captain and Paul that he may bowl at 13:06. Okay, so just one point to make here, Jitendra, is that if maybe the team is a little bit slow coming out and you start 13:01 instead of 1300, then he still owes us 6 minutes. So then he would be allowed to bowl at 13:07. It really is important, though, as umpires, for you to make sure that the teams are on the field and ready to play at 1300 and not 13:01. Okay, so just a bit of field craft for you guys along with that answer. Well done, Jitendra. Let's give somebody else a chance now. Question 2. John pulls a hamstring at 1500 hours. Once again, we don't need to know what time the match started. T is taken at 15:20. It doesn't say it here, but we know that T is 20 minutes. Maybe just remember that for all of these questions. Sometimes they don't give you that information, but in our playing conditions, 3-day, 4-day, or 5-day matches, lunch is always 40 minutes and tea is always 20 minutes. And for multi-day matches, drinks breaks are 4 minutes, and for 50 over matches, drinks breaks are 5 minutes. John returns to the field at 15:50. At 16:10, the batting captain declares and asks you when John can bat. What is your response? So obviously team A is batting at the time, and John will be batting for team B. So we know that there's a 10-minute interval at 16:10 and the new innings will start at 16:20. So we need to tell the captain of team B when John can bat. Abdullah, do we have anyone to take us through? And I think what we can try and do here is, again, event by event. He left at 3 p.m. and at T at 15:20. Maybe we can have the first person to tell us what time, how much penalty time does John owe us before tea, and how much penalty time does John owe us after tea? Any hands up?
Yes, Tom, we've got 4 hands. Arun hand was raised first. So Arun, if you can unmute yourself and give us the answer. How much penalty time does John owe us at the start of the tea interval?
Yeah. At the start of the tea interval, you're asking?
I beg your pardon?
You are asking me at the start of the tea interval how much penalty time John owes, isn't it?
Yes, Arun.
Yeah. So he leaves the field at 15 hours and the tea is taken at 15:20 hours.
Yeah.
Which means at that time he is owing 20 minutes of penalty time.
Great stuff, Arun. And how long is tea?
Tea is for 20 minutes.
Great. And so at the end of the tea break at 15:40, how much penalty time does John owe us?
He still owes us 20 minutes.
He still owes us 20 minutes because the tea break is a scheduled break, does not count for or against any player.
Yeah.
Thanks, Arun. We're going to take the next hand to take us through When John returns to the field at 15:50, how much penalty time does he owe us? And then at 16:10, when the innings is declared, how much time does he owe us then?
Next hand, Tom, was Sasikant. Sasikant, can you unmute yourself, please?
Yes, before the tea was 20 minutes. So after tea is 15:40.
Yeah.
So he came at 15:50. So it's 20 plus 10. That's 30 minutes of penalty time he owes us.
Perfect.
So that's 30 minutes. Then 16:10 minus 15:50 is 20 minutes.
Yeah.
So he has served 20 minutes from the 30 minutes. And 10 minutes is change of interval, change of innings. That 10 minutes will not be counted. So 10 minus 10 is 0. So he can bet at when it comes to bet, he can bet opening.
Okay, Shashikant, you said that the scheduled break of change of interval does not count for or against him. So what does that mean, actually? I think you've interpreted slightly incorrectly there. So it means that he will still owe the same amount of penalty time at the start of the innings break. He will still owe the same amount of penalty time at the end of the change of innings.
Oh, yes, yes.
Okay, so that means at 16:10, when the change of innings started, he owed us 10 minutes, as you've correctly said. At
Yes.
16:20, when the change of innings ends and the next team starts batting, how much penalty time does he owe us?
He still owes us 10 minutes.
He still owes us 10 minutes. Okay, so I guess
at 16:20.
so then I guess you can tell us, because you're pretty much at the end of this question now. When can John bat, Shashikant?
At 16:20. No, 16:30, sorry.
16:30.
Yes.
Or do you know there's an or?
16:30.
Or when how many wickets are down?
5 wickets.
Five wickets are down.
Or
Whichever
when
is first.
5 wickets are down, whichever comes first.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. All right, Shashikant, thanks for that input. Let's have a look at the full answer. John left the field at 1500 and tea is taken at 1520. At the tea interval, John owes us 20 minutes of penalty time. Tea is from 1520 until 1540, and this is a scheduled interval, hence will not count for or against John. John returns to the field at 1550 and he owes us a further 10 minutes. That was from 1540 until 1550. So that means at 1550, when he returns, he owes us 30 minutes. 20 plus the 10. When the batting captain declares at 1610, I would say that he has served 20 minutes. Okay. At 1610, John was on the field for 20 minutes. Hence, he owes us 10 minutes. Then we have a change of innings from 1610 until 1620. This interval is a scheduled break and will not count for or against John. So John can bat at 1630 or when 5 wickets are down, whichever comes first. How do we get to 1630? We said 1620 plus the 10 minutes he still owed us. Okay. Last revision question for the evening. Question 3, the striker hits the third ball of the over to fine leg and sets off for a run. The batters complete 3 runs And as they return for the fourth run, a fielder that returned to the field without permission fields the ball. He throws the ball to the wicket keeper just as the batters complete their fourth run. What actions will you take, if any? Abdullah, we've got a scenario where the candidates need to close their eyes and picture what has happened. The ball has been hit to fine leg and the batters have run and they've completed 3 runs. And when they are turning for the fourth, okay, but they haven't crossed yet. They've turned for the fourth, but haven't crossed. A fielder that returned to the field without permission fields the ball. This should now start a lot of processes in our head as to what actions we need to take. He throws the ball to the wicketkeeper just as the batters complete their fourth run. So what actions, if any, do we take? If we've got multiple hands, then we can split it up into a few pieces, Abdullah.
Yes, Tom, we do have 8 hands. I'm going to give preference to those that didn't answer yet this evening.
Right.
So I'm going to start with Varun. Can you unmute your mic, please?
Yes. Good evening, everybody. So here, so ball. It is a case of illegal fielding. Sorry, illegal a fielder returning without permission. So here, ball automatically becomes dead once the fielder comes in contact with the ball.
Perfect.
So, should I answer full or?
I think that's perfect for now. Thanks, Varun. We shall take the next hand in terms of what needs to happen. So well done. You're quite right. The ball automatically becomes dead. This is not part of the memorandum answer, but good umpiring practice would be to call and signal dead ball because none of the players will know that the ball becomes automatically dead in this scenario. Abdullah, next hand.
Next hand, Nazmi. Nazmi, can you unmute yourself and tell us what happens next? We now know the umpire to call and signal dead ball. What happens next?
Hi, good evening all. The umpire should award 5 penalty runs.
2.
Sorry, yes, to the batters.
To the batting side. Well done, Nazmi. That's the next point. Thank you. We shall take the next hand and ask what other runs are added to the batting side.
Hans, can you unmute yourself and give us the answer to what other runs are given to the batting side?
Yes, good evening, Tom, Abdullah, and all the other members. First of all, after you've scored and signal dead ball, you will award any wides and no balls if applicable. And then you will also, all the runs that have been scored prior to the fielder coming in contact with the ball, you will award. And if they have crossed, that's the completed runs, you will be awarded to the team. And if they have crossed for a further run, then that run will also be awarded. But if they haven't crossed, then only the ones that has been completed will be awarded.
Excellent, Hans. In this example, how many runs are we awarding for the running between wickets?
Only the 3, because the fourth one hasn't been completed when he picked up the ball. So when he came in contact with the ball, the act of illegal fielding was committed, and that run has not been completed yet. So only 3 runs.
Okay, it's not illegal fielding, as Varun corrected himself, I think, before. It is the player coming into contact with the ball, having returned to the field without the permission of the umpires.
Correct, yes.
Cool. Thanks very much for that input, Hans. Now we need to know we've determined how many runs have been scored. There's something else that there's a punishment. We've said 5 penalty runs as well. The ball has automatically become dead. I thought of the next point, but then I lost it while Hans was talking. I want to ask a question, Abdullah.
Something about the ball, I think, Tom.
That's correct. That's correct.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Next hand should tell us, does the ball count as one in the over, or does it not count as one of the over?
The next hand is Christopher Firi. Chris, can you unmute yourself and let us know whether this ball, does it count as one for the over or not?
Hi, Tom. Hi, everyone. The ball does not count in the over.
And will have to be rebowled. Perfect.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. And then last hand, Abdullah, what do we as umpires need to do on the field and after the day's play?
Next hand, Tom, is Mervyn. Mervyn, if you can unmute yourself.
Good evening, all. I'm new to this group, so I'm very chuffed being on this group. I was just wanted to touch on the gentleman who spoke previously regarding to the we need to establish that it's a no ball or not, because that's also going to count as runs. So we need to take into consideration, was it a no ball or was it not when the fielder came into contact with the ball. So my question was, how many runs then was scored, including if it was a no ball? So it's going to be that 3 penalty runs plus the no ball, and obviously it needs to be rebowled because it doesn't count and one as one in the over. So your question was then, what needs to happen now? Well, obviously you need to signal and call it no ball. You need to signal the penalty runs, and after you need to inform the fielding captain what has occurred, and both batsmen. You need to report this to the authorities in charge, whether it's, say, it's the Proteas management, or if it's a club game, management of the club, and you need to explain to them exactly what has occurred and why. Thank you.
Awesome, Mervyn. Thank you so much for joining us from Holland.
Yeah.
We hope that you have enjoyed the lecture, and long may your stay at Western Province and fruitful be.
Yeah, thank you for that welcome.
So what Hans did mention, and it should be on the memo. Doesn't look like it's on there, but you also mentioned it in your own way, is that, and I'd showed it on the slide earlier, that the penalty for a no ball or a wide shall stand if applicable. Okay, so even if it's not mentioned on the memorandum, or sorry, in the question that it was a no ball or a wide, remember what I said last week is that we need to mention the law that is relevant to the question as we understand it, and then we apply the law to the question and tell how many runs accrue to the batting side, for example. So even though they don't mention anything about a no ball or a wide, we need to add the penalty for no ball or wide shall stand if applicable, because that is what the relevant law to this question tells us. Okay, so well done all of you for your input on this question. Just want to make sure that we covered everything by putting back up the last bits of the memorandum. So the batters completed 3 runs and did not cross yet when the ball became dead. Therefore, the total runs will be 8, 5 for the penalty runs and 3 for the completed runs. One thing that we didn't mention is since the batters did not cross when the ball became dead, the non-striker needs to face the next delivery. Okay, because they completed 3 runs, so obviously the non-striker will be facing the next delivery. There are 3 more balls remaining in the over. Also, a little half mark that could help you get over the 80% requirement for the level 3 exam. So since the ball does not count as 1 for the over, there are 3 more balls remaining in the over. Okay, remember that in the question, they told us that this was the 3rd ball. Okay. So actually, if this was the 3rd ball and it doesn't count, then there should be 4 more balls to come in the over. Yeah. 2 legal ones previously, and this 3rd one was not counting. So we still need 4 more overs, 4 more balls to complete the over. So I will change that for future reference. And then this is more a umpiring technique rather than for the memorandum. Write down the time, over and ball, and check at the next interval that the scorers inserted the correct runs in the scorebook. Okay, very important because scorers don't always know all the signals, especially in incidents where runs are disallowed or batters are sent back to their original ends, which is not the case in this point, but these funny little incidents, you just need to jot down how many runs should be scored and make sure that the scorers got it right at the next interval. Okay, so that is all that I have for you this evening in terms of revision questions. Now we're going to go through the chat box to see what has been posted. Abdullah Ashish asks, how many fielders can be substituted at a time? Is there a limit? Can you talk us through that? Abdullah, if you can unmute.
Yeah, yes, Tom. Thanks, Ashish, for your question. So, Ashish, according to the laws of cricket, the law does not put any minimum or max on the amount of substitutes that you can use at any time. So, according to the laws, there is no maximum. So you can substitute as many fielders or substitutes as you have. I do know certain competitions, there are playing conditions that govern maximum amount of fielders that you can use. But in terms of the laws of cricket, you can use as many substitutes as you want.
Great stuff. Thanks, Dula. Second question, still from Ashish. The fielder returns to the field without permission at 11.2 overs, but only touches the ball at 16.4 overs. What do you do in such a situation?
Thanks, Ashish. So Ashish, again, and Tom, you can also comment on your method of umpiring. I prefer using in not in all cases, but this is one of them. If I do pick up a fielder that returned to the field without permission, and I do notice him or her, I will have a word and just mention it to the fielder. Fielder, you haven't told me that you've returned, and I'll speak to the captain as well, and I'll just remind him of the penalty. That's just my method of umpiring. If I do pick her up, if I don't pick her up, and the player touches the ball, you need to then apply the law that covers fielders returning without permission, ball becoming dead. ball shall not count as one for the over. We just covered it now. Then you need to apply the law. So Assis, to answer your question, there's no time span. If the player returned at 11.2 and only touched it at 16.4 and the fielder did not inform either of the umpires that he or she returned, you can still apply the fielder returning without permission law. So yeah, Tom, if you could just maybe comment on your method of. Do you also just mention it, or do you wait till that fielder touches the ball and then apply the law?
I'm exactly like you, Abdullah. We call it proactive umpiring. And there's a question later on from Olumide, who says, will it not be seen by the batting side as you helping out the fielding side? Well, firstly, Olumide, I think there are not a lot of players that know this law. And secondly, we would do it for both sides. So yes, if you do it in the morning, the batters in the morning won't know that you'll do the same in the afternoon. But I would tell the batters after telling the fielding side that this fielder has returned without permission. Please just make sure that you let us know next time when you return to the field that you are back. And if the batters do question or look at us funny as if we are favoring with the fielding side, then we will mention that we will do the same favor to the batting side when they are fielding in the afternoon. And it's really, it's not one of those, I'd say, regular occurrences where players don't tell you when they are back on the field. And if you are alert as an umpire, you will notice when a player comes back on the field if they haven't told you. And then you approach that player and you approach the captain, just say, player, captain, please remember to have told us or remind us, or just wave your hand when you're coming back onto the field, and we shall let you continue. Last one on this point, Abdullah, comes from Cindy. She's the one who's been off the field so much this evening. So she's asking, what if both umpires only realized after a couple of balls that the fielder returned without permission and came into contact with the ball? Does one go back and disallow those runs, etc.? It wouldn't be disallowing runs, it would be awarding penalty runs to the batting side.
Thank you for your question, Cindy. So Cindy, only once, so to answer your question, no, you will not go back. Only once you've picked up once the fielder has fielder returning without permission came into contact with the ball, then you would apply the law and what the penalty runs, ball not to count, etc. So only at that time you will not go back and disallow any of the runs. Did I answer your question, Tom?
Sounds good to me. Thanks, Dula.
And yeah, and just also to add with this, Tom and I mean, we spoke about we really like to do proactive umpiring. That is just our method. There's nothing wrong if you do want to apply the law and you do not want to say anything to the fielder or the fielding captain, and if you do want to wait until that fielder touches the ball and to then apply the law, there's nothing wrong. Just our method of umpiring. We try to be proactive. We try to help, and we will definitely help both sides. We will not favor one. So we try. That is just our method of umpiring. But if you don't want to help, if you don't want to say anything, you do and you want to apply the law, there's nothing stopping you from doing it that particular way.
Thanks, Dula.
Tom.
Next question is from Umesh. At the start of day 3 in a 5-day match, the fielding captain comes to inform you that a nominated player injured himself while practicing early this morning. The captain would like to know if a concussion replacement can be allowed or not for the injured fielder. Abdullah?
Thanks for your question, Umesh. So Umesh, when it comes to concussion replacements, this is a playing condition that was introduced it started in international cricket, and it filtered down to club level, even in the Western Cape, in the Western Province Cricket Association, in the top 2 leagues, we also allow concussion replacement. So this is a playing condition that was brought into a particular competition, and the playing condition states that for you to allow a concussion replacement, the incident needs to happen on the field of play. And if it happens on the field of play, and while play is in progress, so happening on the field of play, that's the first criteria. Second criteria is while play is in progress. So if both criteria are met on the field of play and while play is in progress, you then can allow a concussion replacement. In your example, the player injured himself in early practice before play started on day 3. So it does not meet both criteria. It does not meet the criteria where it needed to happen while play is in progress. So in this case, a concussion replacement shall not be allowed. You shall allow, because the player is injured, so you shall allow a substitute, but a concussion replacement that takes over, full duties in the game, shall not be allowed in this particular instance, because it did not happen while play was in progress.
Perfect.
Thanks, Tom.
2 questions from Mervyn. I will answer the second question because we've already been through it. A player is on the field without the consent and the umpires don't notice. It's good umpire management not to just allow penalty runs. So I read it a little bit differently. I thought the umpires had noticed. Mervyn, will come back to you later just to clear up the question. You're saying it's good umpire management not to just allow penalty runs. Maybe you can elaborate on that a little later. I'm going to ask Abdullah to take care of your first question. So long. Mervyn says, seeing that I'm not a doctor, is there any reason why I may disallow a fielder to leave the field of play? Abdullah?
So Mervyn, when it comes to allowing substitutes or not, firstly, that is a decision for the umpire alone to make. And when making that decision as umpires, whether to allow a substitute or not, you only need to apply 2 criteria. The first one is only acceptable reason, but that's the one. But I want to focus on the first criteria, where you need to decide whether a fielder became injured or ill during the game. So that is the criteria you need to look at. So you ask yourself the question, did this fielder become injured or ill during the game, or for any other wholly acceptable reason? Those are the 3 things that you need to ask yourself. If your answer to that question, yes, the fielder became injured during this game, or yes, the fielder became ill during this game, or the there's a wholly acceptable reason why this fielder is not here, and we will then allow a substitute. So those are the questions that you ask yourself. And if the answer to those questions are yes, the fielder became ill during the game or injured, or there's a wholly acceptable reason, yes, you shall then allow a substitute. So apply those three criteria. To answer your last part of your question, are there times where you may disallow a fielder to leave the field of play? So I wouldn't say disallow it, but I would say where I won't allow a substitute, because you cannot stop a fielder from if the fielder wants to leave the field, you cannot stop it. But what you can do is you've got the power to allow a substitute or not to allow a substitute.
Yeah.
So in those instances where the fielder didn't become injured or ill during the game, let's say a fielder brought an injury into the game and you were aware of that injury, and I had instances where players came into the injury before the game, and I picked it up in the warm-up, and I mentioned it to the injured player as well as to their captain before play start. I noticed this player is coming in with the injury, so I'm letting you now know before this game start, if player X wants to go off for that particular injury, we're not going to allow a substitute. So there are instances where you won't allow a substitute, but if a player wants to leave the field, by all means, you cannot stop him, but you can say no to a substitute. Thanks, Tom.
Perfect. Thanks, Tula. I've just read Mervin's second question again, and it was what I originally thought. So the player is on without consent, and the umpires do notice that he's on without consent. And we have mentioned that it's good umpiring practice to go up to that player and also include the fielding captain in the conversation to say that, player, you've come back onto the field without notifying us. Please in future notify us, and no punishment will take place because the player has not yet come into contact with the ball. Mervin, you've got your hand up. Does that answer your question? And do you have another question? Please unmute your microphone and the floor is yours.
Thanks, Tom. That was exactly what I was referring to with regards to the umpire management. I think it's good practice for the umpire not to just allow penalty runs, especially when you've noticed it and picked it up. I think captains and players will respect you more for doing that, not to just allow penalty runs. Say for instance, this happens now in the second innings. The first innings is done and dusted. Now we're in the second innings. The team needs to say about 15 runs to win. Now captains may see this as favoritism, but I don't see it like that. I see it as good umpire management, not to just allow, because captains might come back to you and they will nail you when it comes to captain's reports. But in the meantime, you officiated this game in a good sense and in a good spirit, and that is the name of the game, the spirit of the game. So players need to respect that, and like I said in the beginning, players and captains will respect you even more for doing that, for just not allow that penalty runs. Thank you. That's just my my feeling.
Thanks for that input, Mervin. That's quite correct. We have mentioned it, proactive umpiring for both sides, for either sides. If it only happens for the one innings, then so be it. But you will know that for any game, you will do it as soon as you see it. And if anybody questions that, then you mention that you would do it for both sides if both sides are guilty. And of course, the thing here is that a lot of the players don't know this law. So if you didn't get a chance to tell them when they went off the field that they must tell you when they're coming back on the field, then again, that's even more reason for you to mention it to them If they've come back on the field without your permission, just say, player, you should have asked for permission to be back on the field. Please, next time, know that you have to do so. Thanks, Mervyn. Next hand up is Christopher Peary, all the way from Zimbabwe. We haven't seen you in a while. Welcome back. Please unmute your microphone. The floor is yours. Christopher, are you still with us? Please unmute your microphone. Doesn't look like Christopher is with us any longer. Next hand up is Jamie Davids. Jamie, please unmute your microphone and the floor is yours.
Hi Tom, can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear. Go ahead.
Okay, so I have this question with regards to penalty time. So it's just I had to think of an example because I didn't know how to ask it. So, say you as the umpire were aware a fielder left the field at 10:30. Then this player came back onto the field at 10:40, but they did not get your permission to return to the field of play, and then you only noticed that they were on the field at 10:45. They still haven't come into contact with the ball. Would they have served 5 minutes of penalty time of the 10 that they would technically have to serve, or would they have to serve 15 minutes from the instant you noticed they were on the field?
Very good question, Jamie, and I think it came up in a level 2 exam a few years ago, and it caught a few people out. Essentially, the answer lays in the question, because you as an umpire only know when he's back on the field when you notice him, right? So yes, he can tell you that he came back on at 10:40, but because you only noticed him at 10:45, he can only start serving penalty time from 10:45, the point at which you noticed that he's back on the field, and you've obviously now had a chat with him and made his time on the field legal, let's call it that. So that 10:30 until 10:45, he will still be accruing penalty time, and only from 10:45 will he start serving penalty time, if that makes sense.
All right, thank you, Tom. Yeah, that does answer my question. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you. You're welcome. Next hand up is Varun. Please unmute your microphone and the floor is yours.
Yes, sir. So I have a question related to penalty time not to incur. So suppose in a 3-day match, so after the end of day 1, on the start of day 2 early morning, a player comes to you limping, says that he fell in the hotel and his leg is hurt because of external blow. So in that case, sir, will penalty time not incur? Though it is during the match and you haven't seen it, but how to handle such situation?
Good question, Varun. Abdullah, you want to take that one? It's almost similar to that concussion replacement question from earlier on.
Yes, Tom, thanks for your question, Varun. Yes, very similar to the concussion one, because when it comes to an external blow, it needs to happen on the field of play, and you need to have seen the external blow happening for penalty time not to incur. So in this instance, because you did not see it, yeah, it happened. It happened. Let's say before play start or overnight, whenever it happened. Unfortunately, in this instance, penalty time will accrue. Only time when it does not incur, and when external blow happens, if it happens on the field and you saw it happening. Thanks, Tom.
Abdullah, if I'm not mistaken, sorry, Varun, it also has to happen during playing time. So it cannot have happened during the warm-up in the morning or in the evenings. A lot of teams like to play soccer as a warm down. So if there's an external injury and you do see it during the soccer match, does that count? Will that incur penalty time or not? Because does the time that the injury happened also affect whether it's excluded
Yes,
or added?
yes, Tom, it does. It needs to happen while play is in progress. Because if you're going to open that door to allow it when, sides warm up before, after games, yeah, you're going to open Pandora's box. So similar to the concussion replacement on the field of play, while play is in progress and the umpires, saw it happening, then penalty time will not be incurred. You're 100% right, Tom.
Perfect. Thanks, Tula. Next hand up is Badronisha. Please.
So I have, sir.
Oh, sorry,
So
Varun. Yeah,
yes, yes.
go ahead.
So similar situation what you discussed. During play, sir. At the time of lunch, sir, while coming back onto the field, as a player falls on the stairs, and you were witness to it.
That's
In
not
that scenario as well, the penalty time will not incur or it will incur. It is similar to playing soccer, but it was during the lunch, not during practice session. And
Varun.
it is during the play, during the match. Sir, the term says during the match. So I'm a bit confused, sir. Please,
Okay.
sir,
Varun,
elaborate.
the term is during playing time. Playing time is between the call of play in a session and the call of time. So
Okay.
lunch is after the call of time and before the call of play. So that will not be considered as during play. Okay, it's during a scheduled interval, which is not during play. Okay.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Patronisha, thank you for your patience. Please unmute your microphone. The floor is yours.
Okay. Hi everyone. So I saw something today that was very confusing. It was between the match of India and Zimbabwe. So Ishan Kishan was batting, and then they like the fielders, they appealed for LBW. Oh no, it was what's one of the batters was there was an appeal for LBW. At the on-field decision was not out, and then the non-striker was out of his ground. But this all happened so fast, and then one of the fielders like broke the stumps, and the non-striker was given out, ran out. So I was a bit confused with regards to the appeal of LBW, and all of a sudden the batter being given out a run out.
Okay, Badronisha, does an appeal for any mode of dismissal render the ball dead?
That's my question. Doesn't the ball become dead when there's an appeal?
No, the ball becomes dead if the batter is out. But if the batter is not out, then the ball stays live.
Okay. So now, okay, I understand why I was given a run out then.
Yeah, it's most evident when there is a run out appeal. So the batters run a quick single, and the throw comes in, and it hits the bowler's end stumps. The batters are in, but there is still an appeal. Maybe it's tight, and the TV umpire is going to be called upon to make a decision. But that ball, the ball then carries on, ricochets to the outfield. What often happens there is the batters carry on running, isn't it? So
yeah.
So that appeal for run out does not render the ball dead, unless, of course, the third umpire finds the field that the batter is short of his or her ground, and then obviously gives the batter out. Then anything after the batter is out is irrelevant because the ball becomes dead when the batter is dismissed, but the ball does not become dead on appeal. Otherwise, fielders would appeal for anything just to make the ball dead so that batters can't run. Think about it.
The appeal was initially for LBW.
That's correct. It doesn't matter what the appeal is for. The ball does not become dead on appeal. The ball only becomes dead when the batter is dismissed. Right. Thanks for that question. Yes,
Tom,
Socrates.
if I can just add something, and I think some maybe where the confusion comes in is, and people do see this happening on TV. So, Badranisa,
Yeah.
when it comes to the LBW appeal, when it comes to the decision review system or the DRS system, there is a difference how the law handles when there's an LB out, when the umpire gives the batter out, and when the umpire does not give the batter out. So when in this instance, when the umpire does not give the batsman out LBW, then the ball remains alive. The batters are able to take a single. The ball can go over the boundary, and it will be 4 leg byes. Ball is still alive. That's why, because the ball is still alive, the umpire did not give the batter out. Ball is still alive. That's why either of the batters could still be run out. But under the DRS protocols, there is a difference when the umpire do give the batter out LBW. So now the DRS protocols state the following. As soon as the umpire lifts his finger to give the batter out LBW, at that instant, the batter is dismissed, although not technically dismissed because on review it can still be overturned. But at that instance, because the umpire gave the batter out and that batter was dismissed when the umpire lifted his or her finger, and according to law, as soon as a batter is dismissed, the ball becomes automatically dead. So that is the difference under the DRS protocols between the two when there's an LBW shot. So when there's the umpire gives not out, ball is still alive, batters can still be run out. When the umpire gives the batter out, the DRS protocol states that as soon as the umpire lifts his finger, the ball automatically becomes dead and nothing that happens afterwards is relevant. So let's say, use this example of Isan Kisan. Let's say the umpire did give the batter out. And now there's confusion, then they run and they sigh and the batter sort of the crease and the wickets are put down. That run out will not count because the original decision, the umpire gave the batter out LBW. Thanks, Tom.
Thanks,
Thanks.
Tom.
Did I answer your question, Badranisa?
Yeah, you did.
Are you happy now?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Tom. Over to you.
Thanks, Dilla. Next hand up is Cindy. Cindy, you have been on the field and back on the field, off the field. Please unmute your microphone. The field is now yours.
It's been a hell of a day at the office. I've got a few questions here. If a player cops an injury, let's say at the end of day one, you as an umpire don't see that injury, he pulls something, and they don't tell the umpires or anything. End of play happens. In the beginning of the second day, the captain comes to you and says to you that the player actually hurts himself in play on the first day, and you were unaware that he'd hurt himself or tweaked his ankle or something like that. Would you go in good faith and allow a substitute?
Yes, Cindy, remember we are not medical doctors. So internal injuries we don't typically see happen in any case.
Yeah.
You know, a pulled hamstring, a guy can be running up to bowl and then just all of a sudden start limping. He could even be faking that pulled hamstring. So
Yeah.
like Mervyn said earlier, we are not doctors. We won't argue if a player says he's injured, and we will allow a substitute because they say that the injury happened on the field of play.
Okay.
They will still have to serve penalty time because it was not a external blow that happened on the field during play.
Okay, so but then the penalty time starts at the call of play on the second day.
That's correct, yes.
Okay. And then something that it confuses me a little bit is why don't, if you allowed up to 8 minutes of time off the field without penalty, why is that? So somebody goes off for 10 minutes, then why does it count the full 10 minutes and not just 2 minutes?
Good question. So firstly, that is a playing condition in most of our competitions and also the ICC. If a player is off the field for 8 minutes or less, then no penalty time shall accrue. They can come back onto the field within 8 minutes and bowl immediately. Why then, if they're off for 10 minutes, do they need to serve 10 minutes of penalty time, not 2 minutes of penalty time? I suppose it's because they are being punished for the time that they are off the field for. So the leeway is for a player maybe wanting to go off the field to change his boots. That typically should take you an over or 2 maximum. But any more than that, then you need to, any more than 8 minutes, then you need to serve the full penalty time. That's just the way the law and the playing conditions are written.
Okay. And then a third question, batter's out and he comes down, he trips as he's coming down the stairs. So he's coming to play, but he's not on the field of play. Does that negate that? And he trips and he hurts himself. Does that count as being on the field of play or not?
So remember that this is a batter now we're talking about, not a fielder, right?
Yeah, sorry, even a fielder's coming, you know, they now walking on to play. Play hasn't been called, but he trips down the stairs as the team's coming to play. You know, they're coming onto the field to get into position to play. One, I suppose, could be really hard about it and say, well, technically you're not on the field of play and technically the call of play hasn't taken place.
That's correct. So, to stick to the letter of the law.
Yeah.
And in that way, nobody can blame us for siding with anyone or being too lenient on anyone. So I think Varun asked that similar question earlier. It will not be classified as a external blow because it didn't happen on the field of play and it didn't happen during playing time.
Okay.
So they will,
even though the intent was coming onto the field of play.
Correct. So they will have to serve penalty time.
And then I got one last question, but it's more out of interest. But while I have the floor, because I've had such a busy day on the field, on and off. So in the TV review, let's say an appeal is made for LBW, okay, and the umpire gives the player not out. Anyway, it ends there, and the umpire, the player then the ball then it comes off the pad and gets caught by the keeper, and the keeper goes up also for an LBW. Everything is around the LBW. But now, on review, the batsman then calls for a review, and on the review, it shows that it's not LBW because it's actually nicked the bat, and the batsman didn't really feel it, and the wicketkeeper hasn't appealed for a catch. He's appealed for an LBW. Can the third umpire then uphold the decision of not out from LBW, but then say, but you can give him out catch? You can give him out court.
I'm going to give this one to Abdullah, but
If
just
the
tell
appeal
us
wasn't for court.
what was the on-field umpire's decision?
Was he was out.
Okay, but out LBW, you say?
Out LBW, yeah.
Okay, cool. Abdullah, I'm gonna give that one to you, our DRS specialist. Please take Cindy through the scenario.
Thank you for your question, Cindy. So, Cindy, when it comes to DRS protocols, and when it comes to LBW, so first thing they look at is front foot. So front foot is happy. That's auto noble these days. And then secondly, they will then ask for front on spin vision.
Yeah.
And if the ball's close to the bat, they will then ask for ultra edge.
Yeah.
Then if they see a spike on ultra edge, so let ultra edge pick up the spike.
Yeah.
Then automatically they'll know, they see the spike, it cannot then be out LBW. They will then follow it through and to see where the ball ends up, whether the catch is taken cleanly. And if the catch is taken cleanly, the batter will then be given out court. The TV umpire will relay that message to on field. So when it comes to an appeal, Cindy, so even though they've appealed for the LBW, but when you're appealing, how's that covers all methods of dismissal. So when you appeal, you don't have to specify how's it umpire I'm appealing for LB or how's it I'm appealing for LBW. How's that covers all methods of dismissal, and DRS are able to, the protocols allow you to check for other methods of dismissals as well. So if it's not LB, the protocols allow other methods to be checked as well. So in this case, they'll see Snicko, they will then take it through whether the catch is taken clearly. If yes, the batter will then be given out. That message will be relayed that the batter is out, or the message will go onto the board. Did I answer your question, Cindy?
Yeah, awesome. Thanks a lot. Thanks, guys. I'm done.
Okay, you're welcome. You're welcome.
Thanks, Dula.
Over to you, Tom.
If I can maybe just add, if even if the ball hits the pad first and then it goes on to hit the bat, the DRS, the third umpire, would check for the catch first because catch takes precedence over all other dismissals except for bowled. So even if the LBW would have been out on full inspection of the DRS, Abdullah, correct me if I'm wrong here, they will check the catch first, because if the catch is out, then the batter is out court and not leg before wicket.
Yes, Tom, court will take precedence.
Perfect. Thanks, Dula. You're welcome, Cindy. Mervyn, you've got your hand up again. Is that an old hand or a new question?
No, it's actually just a new question. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, loud and clear. Go ahead.
Okay. With regards to the player coming onto the field without consent, what I think is we working as a team, and teamwork is absolutely vital, and we need to be vigilant and absolutely aware what's going on around us. So whether that fielder comes under the field of play without consent or with consent, we as umpires need to take note of that, and we need to observe what is happening. We shouldn't be waiting for something to occur or happen before we react. That's why we need to be absolutely awake and proactive, so we can stop this kind of thing happening. So I know maybe it's late in the afternoon, and I know everybody gets tired, but we need to be absolutely vigilant and help each other as a team. So this thing can be curbed and stopped before it happens. So that's just my point of view, and I do think everybody will take note of it, of the fact that we need to be vigilant when we do umpiring. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mervyn. Yes, well said. We mentioned proactive umpiring in that situation. I noticed that our Vice President, Mr. Julian Thompson, had his hand up. Julian, are you still with us? Do you want to say a few words and maybe some well wishes to Liverpool tonight as they take on our bitter rivals?
Good evening, guys. Tom and team and all the participants tonight. Yes, yeah, I am sitting watching the game while I'm busy here with you guys. Just coming back to Cindy's question about the LBW and the way Dula explained, and you also, that the catch takes preference over LBW. You mentioned pad first, then bat. There will be two spikes. The one would be like a soft one, and the other one would be like a woody sound. So the LBW would be not credited, but the catch will take preference. So the batsman, Cindy, yes, the batsman will be given out court, not LBW. Yeah, Tom, the way you just like added on to what Dula said earlier on, that is the correct method. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Julian. Enjoy the football tonight. Let us go back to the chat box. I see a couple of more posts. I would like to read this one out for you, Dula. It's from Ashish, and he is expanding on Badrunisha's question. If Ishan was on 51 runs at the non-strikers, and sorry, if Ishan Kushan was the striker at 51 runs and the non-striker was at 10 runs, the LBW for Ishan Kushan was given not out, and then they went on to run out the non-striker. But because the better batsman was given not out on the LBW, could Zimbabwe still have appealed the LBW for Ishan Kushan? I hope I've explained that clearly enough for you, Abdullah.
So Tom, just to recap, so my understanding, what you've just explained is there was a run-out appeal. Are the fielding side allowed to review the LB? And if that is the case, which one should they go to? Is my understanding correct?
That's correct, yes.
So to answer your question, whether they can go for the LBW review, Ashish, yes, they can, as long as it's done within 15 seconds. So they've got that 15 seconds window period to review the LB or not to review the LBW decision. And then to answer the question, so now we've got two reviews happening. So they obviously want to get the better out. So which review do you go to? Do you go to the run out or you go to the LB, the review? So the DRS protocols guides us when there are an umpire review. The umpire reviews for the run out, and when there is a player review, in this case LBW. So we get guided by the DRS protocols if there are two reviews, umpire and the player review. So there are 4 questions that you need to ask yourself when there is an umpire review and a review from the fielding side. So if all 4 questions or the answer to the 4 questions are yes, you will go to the umpire review first, and the and the player review second. If one of the answers to the 4 questions is no, your reviews will then be in chronological order, which one happened first. So the 4 questions are if there's an umpire review and a player review. First question is fielding side. Was there an appeal by the fielding side? That's your first question. Second question. Both these reviews, do they pertain to the same batter? Third question. Whatever review you take, will the number of runs scored be the same for the batter? And the fourth question is, if you take both the reviews and the batter is dismissed, will the next delivery be faced by the same batter? So those are the 4 questions that you ask yourself when there's an umpire review and a player review. So if your answer to all 4 questions are yes, you will go for the umpire review first, then the player review. If any of the 4 questions is no, you will go for the the reviews will be conducted in which incident came first. So in this instance, Tom, just help me here. Did they? So the first question is, fielding side, was there an appeal? Okay, yes, there was an appeal. Is both reviews for the same batter? Is the LB
No.
and the run out for the same batter?
No, the
So the,
LB
yeah,
is
so
for.
no.
So the answer is no.
Yeah, so there's already a no. So now you don't even need to go further. Once there's one no, the DRS protocols tells us you will now go in chronological order which incident came first. And that's how you would handle that particular. I didn't see the incident, so so which incident happened first? The LB happened first.
That's correct. Thanks very much for that thorough explanation, Abdullah, and I hope that answers Ashish's question. And the problem here is that Ashish has just added to the chat box is the run out didn't require a review. So the bowler's end umpire gave the non-striker out on appeal for the run out on the field. In my mind, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, Abdullah, because there's no umpire's review, the decision has been given and the ball is dead.
100% correct, Tom. As soon as the umpire gave it on field, that decision will stand, which in this case is the run out. There needs to be an umpire review and a player review that goes to the TV umpire for the DRS protocols to take in. In this case, no umpire review, the run out decision will stand.
Perfect. Thanks, Dula. Last question, hand up is Umesh. Umesh, please unmute your microphone. And the floor is yours.
Hello, good evening, everyone. Just wanted to ask you in the level 3 with the laws, are we going to apply the plain conditions? Which plain conditions we will be using them?
Umesh, I did mention it in the first lecture, but I'll mention it again. The exam is based 95% on the laws of cricket, which we are presenting to you. Where there is a playing condition that needs to be included in the answer, the playing condition will be given to you in the question. For example, the scheduled hours play for the day will be given to you in the question. For example, the minimum number of overs required to be bowled in the day will be given to you in the question. And so you should always answer those questions as to how many overs are left in the day's play after a dismissal, for example, or after a rain interruption. So you don't have to learn any playing conditions. The playing conditions that will be questioned will be actually given to you in the question. I hope that answers your question, Umesh.
Yes, it does. And I had a bit of confusion. I might be wrong, or I might have not read properly. When the player leaves the field of play, we say that there is allowance of 8 minutes. So is that a law or it's a playing condition?
No, that is a playing condition in most competitions, including ICC competitions, international cricket, but it is not in the law. And I can tell you for a fact that it is not a playing condition used in the level 3 exam. So definitely don't use the 8-minute allowance in the answering the questions in the exam.
Okay, noted. And just to clear one more thing, for is that 8 minute when it's used, is it the same for ODIs and test match, or they're different?
It is the same. It's even for T20 competitions, if I'm not mistaken, Abdullah, there is an allowance of 8 minutes. So if you are off the field for 8 minutes, then you do not need to serve penalty time. If you're off the field for 9 minutes, then you need to serve 9 minutes of penalty time.
Okay,
Yes,
the
Tom,
same
the
applies
same
with
for all three formats.
all three. Okay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Very much cleared now.
Thank you, Umesh. I see our Vice President has got his hand up again. Julian Thompson, the floor is yours.
Tom, I just want to reiterate what Dula said. In all three formats, the 8 minutes is like a standard practice for penalty time or being off the field. Anything over that, you have to serve. If you're off for 10 minutes, you have to serve 10 minutes. But 8 minutes is the standard rule throughout all formats. Thank you.
Thanks, Julian. Umesh, your hand is up again. Is that an old hand or a new question? Hand is down now.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, you're welcome. Ladies and gents, I'm checking the chat box. No new questions, and I don't see any new hands up. So I'd like to thank you all for your interaction this evening. Always good to learn from the questions and answers that we get and give. We shall meet again on Wednesday. I'll send out the recording of this lecture in a couple of hours' time. It will be on YouTube. Thank you for joining us. Have a good evening further. Thank you and good night.
Thank you, Tom and Abdullah, for that.
Sure.
Good evening, everyone. Have a good evening.